Welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this video, we're going to continue our series on showing you some web development basics in Webflow, which is a no-code editor. And what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to set up a typical menu. So we'll do a horizontal and we'll do a vertical menu. So a vertical menu might be something that you see in a sidebar, and a horizontal menu might be what you see at the top of the page as your main navigation for most websites. So what we have is our sort of layout that we've been using for a while. And I have this list here, and the list is under the navigation tag. Remember we made this an actual navigation tag. What this does is it helps for accessibility. So if someone is going through this with a screen reader, having the navigation tag there lets them know, okay, this is navigation for the website and not just some random list. If you just have a list on there with no indication that it's navigation, then the screen reader can't say that. Although as far as someone tabbing through the site who's not visually impaired, is probably okay. Let's say someone just has styles turned off or something like that to speed things up, or because it's clearer to see. So always put your navigation, if it's navigation and not just a list, put it inside of the navigation tag. And then we have here an unordered list, and so you can find that here under list, and it doesn't specify in Webflow ordered or unordered on this particular section here. They just have a list, and then when you click here, it tells you, you can group elements together and add structure, and it can take on a UL or an OL. So there's an unordered list, which is what we have. So there's just bullet points, and then if you come over here to let's see, if we select the list and we come over here, you can see that because it's a list, it gives you sort of a special contextual menu. And you can either remove the bullet points, or you can have circles, or you can change it to squares. This is an ordered list, so it would have numbers. You can do letters, so also part of an ordered list. And then you could do Roman numerals, which is also part of an ordered list. So these three buttons have to do with an ordered list, and these have to do with an unordered list. And then if you remove them all together, then you have no bullets. So what we're going to do is, before we get started, we have sort of, it's been created a list, what do we call it? A list class. I guess the class that they're calling list. We can just rename this because we don't need a list class, because we're going to have all lists are going to basically be the same. What we want is a specific class for a menu, so we're just going to call this menu. We could go so far as to say menu horizontal. So we'll start out by creating a menu, and then we're going to add this horizontal class. So let's just remove this for now. So we're just going to create a menu. This could be a vertical or this could be a horizontal menu, either one. And what we want to do for our menus is we want to get rid of this bullet point. So we just click on style and we get rid of it, and now it's gone. And then we also have some space here. You can see that everything is up to the left edge. And if you look here, you can see that there's 40 pixels of padding that's on the left side of this menu. That's normal. That is what the browser does whenever you have a list. It indents the list from the left. And so in order to get rid of that, you can click here and just say 0. And then that automatically gets rid of that. It also has 10 pixels of margin on the bottom to separate the list from whatever is below it. We can remove that as well. This would be like saying padding 0 or margin 0 in the CSS. So now we have no padding, no margin around our menu. And this is fine. So this is how we can create either a vertical or horizontal menu. And so now let's go ahead and add a combo class of horizontal. And for our horizontal menu, we're going to take advantage of Flexbox. Now, Flexbox is a layout tool that we have, and you can find it here in the display. So under layout, the first one here is called Flex. And what Flex does in its default is it lays out all the elements horizontally. So instead of, these are all, you can tell, block level elements. You can see that they go all the way across the page, or across its container, 100% of the container. So this menu item actually, it extends all the way to here, so that if we color if we color this, you can see that the color extends all the way to the edge. That's how you can know that it's a block level element. And so you can see here the little blue outline extends all the way across the container. So each of these are a block level element, and because that, it takes up all this space and sort of pushes the next item down. If we were to make these list items into, is this the right one? Okay, if we were to make this list item into an inline item, then you can see that the outline is only taking up the space that the actual link takes up. So that's a little bit different, but these two remain block level elements because they're taking up the full amount of space across the page. This one here, when I do this, it doesn't extend. It only extends as far as the link or the content inside of the list item. So if we do inline block, same thing happens, except we have the ability to use padding and margin on here. If it's an inline element, then we don't have the ability to do that. So we're going to stick with Flex. Actually, we're going to stick with block for these, and we want to go to our menu here. You can always navigate through your you can navigate here, or you can navigate down here by clicking on different things. So like if you go to an internal element but you want to come out, you can do menu. And what we want for our menu is we want it to be display flex. And you can see that as child elements, it lays them either horizontally or vertically. Now the default is what's called row, or you can change it to column. Column is laying it out vertically, row is laying it out horizontally. And so for our navigation, at the top of the page, we want to lay it out horizontally, and then we'll also create a vertical combo class which lays it out using Flexbox. It lays it out vertically. So let's go to our menu, horizontal, and we click display flex, and then you can see that all of our elements are now side by side. They are still, if we can get to our list item, they're children of the list items are children of the menu now. So they don't have necessarily any of these options here. If you can turn that on or off, either one. It doesn't have any sort of bearing necessarily on it because the menu is taking over the styling now. So we're display flex. Our direction is horizontal, but you can see that we could also do vertical. You can see that for our vertical up here, this is what we'll choose. And right now we want to lay them out horizontally. Right now the alignment vertically, so this way, is to stretch them from top to bottom in this menu container. And justify is left and right. So for the default, justifies left and right. Now when we go to vertical, these things will flip. So it's something to, it's kind of a weird naming thing, but you just have to get used to reversing those two things when you do a vertical or column. So some things that we can do here to justify, we can justify them to the center because menu is a block level element that goes across the entire container. Then everything inside this container, this is left, this is center, this is right. So if we justify it all the way to the end, then that means to the end of the Flex container. So we can actually sort of right justify this or center justify it. We can do space between, which will put the very first element at the far left, the very last element at the far right, and then it spaces everything else out in between evenly between each other. So if there were 5 items, then you would have another here and another here. And the last one is space around, and it's similar to space between, except it puts an equal amount of space on each side of the element. So it takes all the space. We have 3 elements, and there's sort of an invisible line right here and an invisible line right here. So there's an equal amount of space on this side of footer as there is on this side of footer. So it sort of gives you some padding on each side to play with and makes the elements a little bit closer together. So for our purposes here, I'm going to choose Flex End, and there are just a couple of different ways to do this. This is the easiest way for me for most situations, not every situation, but for most situations this is the easiest way for me to create this this particular menu. So we have our menu, and then if we go to the list item, if we go to the list item, I want to put just a little bit of margin, especially if my list is to the right side. I want to put a little bit of margin to the left. So I want this to stay flush to the right. And then I want each of these list items to have a little bit of space to the left. It won't matter if the first one has some space because nothing is to the left of it, but it will matter if these others have space. So one way to do that is to just say something like 1 rem, and a rem is equal to whatever the base font size is. For most browsers, 16 pixels is the base font size on the body. Unless you go into the body and you make a change to yourself to say it's 18 or 20 pixels, it will almost always be 16. That's sort of the standard 1 rem. And whatever you call 1 rem is going to be 16 pixels. Whatever you call 2 rem is going to be 32 pixels. 3 rem is going to be 42. But if you go back into the body and you change that size to 18, now 1 rem equals 18 pixels, 2 rem equals 36 pixels, 3 rem equals 54 pixels, and so on and so on. So it gives you some flexibility, but also gives you a little bit of stability as far as knowing exactly the pixels. If you use M units, that's a flexible unit, but it's based on the container size. So if in this container right here, you set the font size to 18 pixels, now everything else that's an M inside of that is based on that 18 pixels. If you did 36 pixels on the container, then everything inside that container is based, 1M is based off of 36 pixels. So it can shift and vary across the website. Sometimes that's what you want to happen, to have sort of dynamic text. But for me, rems are better than pixels because they're still a flexible unit, but they sort of give me the stability of especially with the designers, when they give me their designs, you know, their expectation is certain things are going to be at certain pixels. It helps to do some other things along the way as well. So for a margin on our list item, we're going to say the margin on the left is going to be 1 rem. Now we're only doing this right now for list item. What we want though is we want to affect all of our list items. So we can call this list item like that. And then for each of our list items, we can actually apply the same class. Let's see. So we've applied an actual class, a class called list item. And in fact, we might want to call this, let's call this something more specific than that. Let's call this menu item. Okay. So something more specific than list item would be menu item, because this is a part of our menu, right? And then for this one, we're also going to say our menu item class. Okay, so now with our menu item class applied, we have one, let's see if we can get to it. So you see that it changes here as well. So we have menu item, and maybe this one we'll call menu item link. That's not right. So menu item, this one, let's remove the class. So then we have our menu item, and then you can leave the link, or you can actually call this menu item link, something like that. So if you wanted to specifically style your A tag for the menu a little bit differently, let's say you want these to be bold, but other menus you don't necessarily want them to be bold, then you could give this its own specific class. A lot of times I like to give the link inside the menu item, the list item, its own class. So if you're thinking at this point that that web design is very tedious, you would be absolutely correct. Web development can be very tedious, and this is the way it is. It's kind of a tedious job, because there are hundreds of things, just little details to remember, and you kind of get used to it after a while, but there are a lot of things to remember. To do a website well, it's way easier to just throw it out there, especially with Webflow, and let Webflow do all the naming and everything for you. But I assure you, if you ever take this website out of Webflow, it is confusing, because nothing is named with anything specific. It's just called list item 1 or list item 2. It's not called anything that you would know. And it can be super confusing. So taking the time to do this is sort of like InDesign, if you name your layers and your groups and all that kind of stuff. It's super helpful for the next person who comes, even though you probably understand how everything is grouped together. But naming and labeling things like this is really, really helpful for someone to come back and have some understanding of what everything is. So this is our completed horizontal menu. And remember, we've attached horizontal to it, which means that we're doing the flex and the horizontal. We're keeping our alignment to stretch, because this is only taking up the amount of space. If our menu had a height, let's say of 10 viewport height, so it had some height to it, and it's not just taking up the space of the menu itself. Now you can see that these are stretching. So these menu items are stretching the entire height, but which is here. But essentially it's the same as if they're aligned to the top. But when they're aligned to the top, the menu item is not taking up the full height of the menu itself. We can do centering. Flexbox has made it very easy to do centering, which used to be a real difficulty in CSS. You can also attach it to the bottom of the section, and you can do to the baseline, which is a little bit different if you're matching up two things on two different sides. You're matching up the baselines as opposed to the end of the element. So that one can get a little bit confusing unless you see an example of it. But typically I would do centering for an item if there was something else over here, which I can show you later in an episode that I want to do of a masthead. So how do you do a logo on one side, nav bar on the other side, where they're not on two different lines, right? So we would use something like centering. But essentially I just want to go to this menu and I want to take off any height that's there. We want this to be auto, and auto just means it's sort of the default. It takes up whatever space the content inside of it is taking up space. So if we go to so see, these links are a little tight. So if we want to create a little bit of space, I would put space on the menu item, and for the menu item you can give it a little bit of padding. Let's say 1 rem of padding, and you can do that all the way around or just on the top and bottom, so that now you can see that our menu has some space on the top and bottom. So we've already provided some margin on the side of our menu item. You can see there's margin to the left, but then internally we can provide a little bit of padding to just sort of get it away from the top and bottom edges of the container. So that creates a nicely formatted horizontal menu, and I would keep it like this because normally I'm connecting it with the logo inside of this larger masthead. You know, these two items are together, and then what we'll do in the future is on this masthead container we'll say display flex, and then the logo will be on the left side and the navigation will be on the right side, or you could flip it vice versa and have one on the other side, opposite. And that way we have a flex item here, but we also have a flex item between these two. And Flexbox works the same way, whether there's a bunch of items or whether there's only 2 items. So we'll work that into a different video. Okay, so let's look at our vertical menu, and a good place for that would be the sidebar. So we'll come in and we'll say list, and we'll come down to our sidebar, and we can just drop it between our button and our heading. And you can see here that our list is the same. We have a list item, and inside that we can actually place some text. So we'll just do the same text. There's no need to do anything else. What was it? Main sidebar. Actually, we'll do since we're in the sidebar, we'll list the header. So we called it masthead, and main, and footer. Okay, so you can see when we put our text in there that it actually shrinks up. These were wider or taller, and now it shrinks those up. So again, we have our list, and we can give it a class of menu. And when we give our list a class of menu, it gets rid of our bullets. Remember, that's our menu, and that's how we designate this as a menu. And then we're also going to put the class of vertical. And for the vertical, we can either leave it as is, or we can call it display flex. And this is, remember, our default is a row and not a column. So they're flexing out along the x-axis or the row. But this time we want it to flex along the vertical axis. Now the advantage of doing this over just leaving them as block level elements is that we get access to all of these layout features. So we can use things, we can align them left or center or right. So we can do center alignment very easily. It's not so hard if these are block level elements, but it gives us a little bit more flexibility when the viewport changes. So up here, when it goes from mobile to tablet or to desktop, it's a little less code probably to just do Flexbox, and gives you a little bit more choice about what you can do and how you can lay things out. So we have those options over here to do these things. We can make it go all the way across, which stretches it horizontally. Remember, we were stretching it vertically before. But when you click on vertical, now alignment is left. This is what we were doing for justify before. So aligning these items now aligns them along the x-axis, because we've changed the direction of the flexing. That also changes these, so you can see them change here when I click on vertical. So align now is for vertical alignment, and justify is for horizontal alignment. But when I click on vertical, align becomes the horizontal alignment, justify becomes the vertical alignment. So something to watch out for. It's a little bit easier actually in Webflow because it visually changes here and tells you, okay, justifies for the vertical alignment. But when you're writing by hand, it's just something you have to remember. Oh, okay, I have to reorient, align items, and justify content. So we have we have the ability to center them or to put them at the end. So the end would put them down at the bottom. Again, if our menu had some height, let's say 20 viewport height, then you can really see how these alignments play out. If you had a lot of content in here, let's say the sidebar itself had a lot of content, then you would be able to sort of put these things in a different place. So if our menu had padding or something like that, let's say our vertical menu, instead of a height, had some padding, maybe. Let's see if this will work. Sorry. And then, yeah, that's not it. We had to do it on the elements themselves, so that wasn't it. Okay, just like we needed to put space up here to the left of each of these elements, we need to separate these list items out. And so we go to our list item, and let's give each one a margin on the bottom of, let's say, 1 rem. And now they're spaced out a little bit. But again, what happened was it only did it to one list item. So we need to make this menu item vertical. And then now we can place that on each of these. So now each of them has one rem of space on the bottom. So you can see that for each of these menu items. Okay. So that's essentially how we're going to be able to create this vertical menu. And if you wanted each of these to be a link, you could double click them, click on the link, and then this would go to masthead. Another way to do that, if you watched a previous video, let's do it on main, is to click link and choose this one, which is a page section. If you click on that, you can actually choose which page section that we've named, and then it will actually scroll to whatever the page section is. So we could choose masthead. This one is main, so we could choose to scroll to main, and it'll behave the same way as if you put a link. Same thing with the footer. If we just do this and scroll to the footer, then that actually gives us a scrollable link that goes to the different places. So let's take a look at this when it's published. Now that we have a vertical menu and we have a horizontal menu. And okay, so we have a horizontal menu here. It takes us down to the right places. We have our vertical menu, and it will take us to the right place. It scrolls to there, scrolls to there, scrolls to the footer, scrolls back to the masthead. So you can see that they're different, but they're laid out very similarly. So they have a menu class that gets rid of the bullet point, and then we have sort of our own special styling for horizontal or vertical menu. Now the power of this is here. Let's say we wanted to put another horizontal menu into our footer, then we could take a list and we can put that right here into our footer. And then all we have to do with our list is we give our list the menu class, and then for each of these items we're just going to give it a class of menu item. Oh, gotta spell it right. Still not spelling it right, huh? Let's remove that, and we say menu item. And you can make these their own. Instead of saying menu item, you could say menu item HORZ, like horizontal, or HOR, and that would also do the same thing. So our menu is going to be none of these, and then we need to put vert or horizontal, and then let's see. Oh, we don't actually have any menu items, so let's say masthead, and then this menu item is going to be main. And this menu item is going to be sidebar. And then we can make each of these a link. Goes to masthead. Goes to main. And goes to sidebar. Okay, and then let's look back at our menu. So we have menu horizontal on our list items. We have menu item and menu item link. So we need to probably connect these as links. And for some reason our horizontal class because I didn't put the right one. Somehow I misspelled it. Did you see that? So I actually misspelled it. horizontal is not horizontal. So I was applying a class and it wasn't doing anything because it wasn't the right spelling of the class. Very important. So I had to choose the right one. So when I choose horizontal, then this one is misspelled too. So spelling is a common error in web development, so something you have to watch out for. So we've created essentially this a similar menu item as up here, and all we did was we take a list, just a regular old list, and we apply the menu class, and we apply horizontal. If we take this away, then you can see that we get that vertical list. If we wanted to create a vertical list, all we have to do is place our vertical what do we call it? Our vertical class, right? So if we remove that and we do vertical, then we'll be able to flex these items as well. But as we want to make that horizontal. So we'll make it horizontal like that, and now we have all of our links. If we wanted to do menu item link for these, we could do that as well. And then every menu item link, we could actually we'd actually style each of those menu item links so that they are you can see how they all change to the same font because they're all under this menu item link. It would change the ones at the top as well. So you can actually make some changes to all of the menu item links if you want, or you could do menu item link dash, I don't know, header or sidebar or whatever you want. So we create some specificity somewhat so that we can apply classes to things, and we can make those changes very quickly. So excuse me, you're writing the code once essentially, and then when you apply the class to other elements, then it will change it into the variation that you want it to be. So hopefully that makes some sense. If it doesn't make sense, or if I've skipped something or something doesn't seem right, then please leave those comments down in the comments section. Hopefully this will help you to use the cascading effect of CSS, which is there's sort of the main styles, and then you have variants, and those variants sort of get passed down to items that you want greater specificity. So all lists have a common CSS, and then when you apply menu, all menus that are lists have a common styling, and then when you apply menu header or menu footer or whatever, then the menus in those specific places, they take on all the styles of menu, but they also have some special styles of their own. So that's how you can create sort of write your code more dry. That way when you want to change all the styles of all the menus, you just go to your menu class, make those changes, and it'll change all of your menus to go that way. If you only want to change specific menus, you can add specificity through a class, and then you can only change that menu, not all the menus. So it's a way that we are able to keep some control over the styling, but also have a lot of variation within the website. So hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, keep working with it, because after a while it sort of becomes second nature. And also working with Flexbox isn't so hard, but it can be, the terminology is a little bit weird at the beginning, but once you get it, there are only a few options to use. I actually have a Flexbox playlist on my channel, so if you want to check that out, it goes through each of the all of these options for Flexbox over here. All these different options here, it goes through how Flexbox works and shows you some examples of how to use it and what does it mean when you're doing wrapping, or what does it mean when you're doing vertical or horizontal or whatever. So you should check that out if you're new to Flexbox, and it's a powerful layout tool that'll get you get your code to a better place. So a more modern layout tool than the ones that we've had before. All right. One way to pay these videos forward is to just click the thumbs up button. One way to get notifications is to subscribe and then click the bell, and then you'll get notified every time that I upload a new video. I'm going to continue working through this series and just pump out as many of these videos as I can, just showing you the basics of web development and then how that looks and how it behaves inside of Webflow, which is a sort of a no-code, low-code platform, a graphic interface for web design and web development. All right, I think that's it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.